This week is Israel's Independence Day, and so we are celebrating their independence with the root of the word atzma'ut, which is Ayin Tzadi Mem. Welcome back to Hebrew Vocab Boost. I'm Sapir, and in honor of Israel's Independence Day, we are talking about the root Ayin Tzadi Mem. The Hebrew word for independence is atzma'ut, which we can see has an Ayin, a Tzadi, and a Mem in it. But is that all this shoresh is good for? Of course not. There are only a handful of words in the Tanakh, but modern Hebrew has a ton of them. So let's get to it. So it all starts with the word etzem, which means bone. And it doesn't look like it, but this is a feminine word. And it does have a feminine plural ending, atzamot. So some form of this word meaning bone, whether it's in singular or plural or has some pronominal endings on it, makes up almost half of the words with this shoresh in the Tanakh. To be honest, I was a little shocked at how much talk of bones there was in the Tanakh. Okay, so here's how I see the possible development of this root. Remember, I am not a biblical scholar, and I don't currently have access to linguistic journals. But this chart that I made seems plausible to me based on my understanding of semantic change processes. So there are two processes that are prominent here, and I'm putting the technical words right down here where the subtitles go. But the first is a process whereby a word changes or expands its meaning to something associated with the original meaning. And so that's how we get limb. And so our limbs are kind of bony, and so the bones are associated with the limbs. And so now the word etzem doesn't only mean bone, it also means limb. And bones are also like the strong part of our body, right? They're not the soft tissue. And so they get associated with strength. And so we also see all kinds of words associated with the idea of strength. And the second linguistic process is when a part gets associated with a whole, or vice versa, the whole with the part. And we kind of see this with the bone now representing the whole body or the frame. I think of this as almost like the skeleton or even the self. And then that idea of self gets associated with sameness, because if I do something to myself, then I'm doing it to the same person. And so we get the idea of same. And we also see that if I can do something myself, then I'm independent. I am not dependent on other people. So we can see how these meanings grow and grow and grow. And also on the strength side, we see that that these words meaning strong often have something to do with another country. And so a strong country is often one that has a lot of people or a large army. And so the word also gets associated with being numerous. And so often in the Tanakh, they use the word to mean numerous. It's in the meaning of a numerous population. But there are other times when it is used to mean numerous when it's relating not to people, but rather to acts that people have done. So sometimes these are enchantments or sins or evil acts or stuff like that. So like I said, this word etzem means bone. And in the Tanakh, it can also mean limb or frame or body. But in modern Hebrew, at least in a physical sense, it only means bone. And in biblical times, we pretty much only had the word bone. But now in modern times, we have so many compound words and little expressions that have the word bone in them. And so we have etzem habriach, which is the collarbone or the clavicle. Etzem hamafteach is the keystone in an arch. So If you think of the way an arch looks with various stones making up the arch, the keystone is the one at the very top that basically holds it all together. That's called the keystone, and in Hebrew that one's called etzem hamafteach. It's more like the key bone. But that word can also refer to a bone in the body. I cannot figure out what the English word is for this bone. I'm not even sure where it is. It's a bone that holds the rib cage to the chest. Thus says the Academia, so I am not quite sure what bone that is. And etzem hashichma is the scapula. This is a bone in our back. It kind of goes from shoulder to shoulder, and so it's back there, upper back, right here. There are 3 ways to say bone marrow, and one is leshad etzem, and then there's also meach etzem and moach etzem. And the Academia says that moach etzem is definitely antiquated. I think leshad etzem is the most common way to say it. And there's an expression, ad leshad atzmotav, which literally means until the marrow of his bones. But it means like to the core of one's being. Dildul etzem is literally bone loss, and it is the way that they refer to osteoporosis. Hit rakechut ha'etzem is a softening of the bones, usually due to poor nutrition, and there is a word for this in English called osteomalacia, which I had never heard of, but it's apparently a disease or a syndrome, a condition. And in grammar, shem etzem is a noun. And we also have a phrase that is in the Tanakh, and this one is etzem uvasar, although you never hear it said exactly that way. That literally means bone and flesh, and in my Tanakh and the way I've always heard it is flesh and blood. Like if someone is your flesh and blood, they are they're somehow related to you by blood. And so they say bone and flesh, etzem uvasar, but it's always with a personal ending. So in the Tanakh, we see it as atzmechem uvasarchem, atzmecha uvasarcha, or atzmi uvasari. And even in its listing in the Academia is atzmo uvesaro. They don't want to put it at all just flesh and blood. They want a person there. So they say his flesh and his blood. So whereas in English we can say flesh and blood without saying whose flesh and blood it is, in Hebrew you really have to have that person there. With regard to the meaning of self, this exact meaning is not actually attested in the Tanakh, but it is all over modern Hebrew. The way we say, I do something to myself, we literally say, I do it to my bone. And we cannot say, ha'etzem sheli. We always have to use the form with a pronominal ending. So here are all the pronominal endings, and you can see that even when the person is a plural, like ourselves or yourselves or themselves, in Hebrew, the bone is still going to be a singular bone. So we do it to our bone, or they do it to their bone. The plural of etzem can get all of these endings, but it's now going to mean our bones, or their bones, or your bones. It's not going to be, I have bones, right? I don't just have one bone, I have many bones. I can say atzmotai to mean my bones, but to say myself, the etzem is always going to be singular. Atzmi can also be used as an adjective, or in English it would really be more like a prefix meaning self. And so we see it in words like bitachon atzmi, which means self-confidence, or rachamim atzmiyim, which means like self-pity. And I'm sure there are plenty of others. And from self, we move on to independence, which of course is the whole reason for the video this week. Atzma'ut means independence, and this can be on a personal level or on a national level or anywhere in between. Atzma'i is the adjective that means independent, and of course it would be atzma'it if it's a feminine person. Oved atzma'i is a self-employed person or an independent contractor, someone who is not dependent on an employer for their paycheck. And of course, Yom Ha-atzma'ut is Independence Day. And so in the Tanakh, we have the meaning of same. And it's almost always used with the word yom, meaning day. And so they'll say etzem hayom or etzem ha whatever. It's also used with shamayim once, but most of the time it's used with yom. And it's translated all kinds of different ways, but they all mean the same thing. On that very day, on that same day. Sometimes it's just on that day, but it's on the day that we've just been talking about. And as far as I know, this expression is not used anymore. If I were to try to say something like that in modern Hebrew, I would probably use oto or ota to mean the same whatever. And on the strong/numerous side, we have this word atzum in the Tanakh, which means strong or numerous. And with the meaning of numerous, it is usually used with the populations of countries, but as I mentioned before, it can also be used with some kind of acts, like sinful acts or like charms or sorceries, stuff like that. And these are all adjectives in Hebrew, but adjectives can also be used as nouns in Hebrew to mean, like, if I say ha'atzumim, I'm saying like the strong ones. And in modern times, this word does not mean strong or numerous anymore. But it is used colloquial to mean like great, tremendous, excellent, wonderful, things like that. Although I've, to be honest, there's so many words that are slang for great in Hebrew. That is not one of them that I hear. So the modern word for powerful is otzmati, and there are other words for strong, but they come from a different shoresh. The nouns that are used in the Tanakh that mean strength are otzma, ta'atzumot, and otzem. And these words do not show up very often. There's only a handful of instances where they're written in the Tanakh. And so it's really hard to tell the difference from such a small sample as to what the difference in meaning or usage might be. There are a couple modern Hebrew nouns. One of them is the same noun, otzma, which means strength or intensity, or even volume, like to turn up the volume on a stereo or a television set. And ma'atzama is a power, like a world power, like a powerful country. And hitatzamut is the shem peula, the verbal noun of the hitpa'el verb lehitatzem, which means to strengthen, to grow stronger. So hitatzamut is the noun, strengthening or growing stronger. And in the world of movies or television or video editing, it can be a fade-in, like a picture, an image, or a sound is growing stronger. And itzum means peak, middle, or climax. And I really struggled with understanding what exactly they were talking about until I saw an example in the Academia's website, and it made it click perfectly in my head. So be'itzumo is the phrase that I saw in the Academia's website, and they said that it means something to the effect of in its full force. And they used the example hakaitz ba'itzumo. Summer is in full swing. And so there you have it. It's like it's full, it's in the middle of it, the thick of it. And then we have a pa'al verb, la'atzom, which is in the Tanakh, but we never see it in that form. It's usually either in the what I consider the past tense or the future tense, but I believe biblical scholars call it the perfect or the imperfect. And it means to be strong or to be numerous. And that word does still exist in modern Hebrew, but it doesn't have anything to do with strength or numbers. In fact, in modern Hebrew, really the whole idea of being numerous has completely gotten lost with this shoresh. So the word that means to become strong is now a hitpa'el verb, lehitatzem. And there's also a hif'il verb, leha'atzim, which means to strengthen, intensify, or amplify something else. There has to be an object of that verb. So there are three other meanings that I don't really see the relationship between them and the word bone or any of the other meanings that were in that first big, huge family. If you see it, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to see the relationship. So one of the words is la'atzom, and we had la'atzom meaning to strengthen, but we see this word twice in Isaiah meaning to shut one's eyes. And you have to use it with the word eyes, but it only goes with eyes. You can't shut anything else and use this verb. And so in modern Hebrew, that is the only meaning of the word la'atzom. It only means to shut. It only gets used with eyes. And because la'atzom is a pa'al verb, its passive form is a nif'al verb. So lehe'atzem means to be shut. And of course, only eyes can be the subject of that verb. And then there's the adjective atzum, meaning shut or closed. And since it only goes with eyes, I imagine you're only going to see it as atzumot. And another seemingly unrelated word is atzuma, which is seen only once in the Tanakh. It's in Isaiah 41:21, and it shows up as atzumotechem, which is translated as your pleas, as in like your case or your evidence that you are making, almost as if you are in court. And in modern times, we have that same noun, atzuma, and I've seen it defined as petition, but I've never actually seen it in the wild, but this seems like the same word. And lastly, we have the word itzum, which does not appear in the Tanakh with this any meaning like this, but it seems to mean sanction. It's a noun, it means sanction. Pealim.com says that it only means sanction when it's in the plural. There's also a phrase that I found in the Academia's website, itzum kaspi, which means monetary sanction or even a monetary fine. I kind of feel like this could be related to strength, almost, especially with sanctions, like you're wielding your power by, like, one country or a group of countries maybe are wielding their power against a rogue nation by placing monetary sanctions on them. I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch. Wow, that is a lot of words. So the word atzma'ut is not so atzma'it. It's not so independent. It has a big, huge family. Anyway, I wish everyone a Yom Ha-atzma'ut sameach. Happy Israeli Independence Day. As always, if you have any questions or feedback, please leave them in the comments. Hit like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see more. Lehitraot, Papa Ama Ba'a. See you next time.